up, most delicious ones? Welcome back. Death to the fingers. Welcome to the new subscribers. You guys are amazing. Thank you. I love you all. Welcome to your tri-weekly dose of improvisational madness on the internet. A lot of channels basically showing you how to play songs, but not how to basically express yourself on the instrument. And so that's why we exist, essentially. And of course, there's other stuff where we talk about stuff that we learned from songs, about technique and arranging songs or parts or chord progressions and things of this nature. But ultimately, of course, the focus is always going to be on the lead stuff and shredding and whatnot. But, you know, the sort of intelligent shred, if you will, where you're not just going off. Instead, you sort of have a plan in mind and you have the ability and the knowledge base to be able to use these more exotic ideas like substituting in the melodic minor. That was this week's little sort of tidbit that I thought was interesting we could go over. We're also going to do one on Superior Drummer. Basically, someone was asking about doing one on the Superior Drummer stuff and recording that and whatnot and doing production on it. So I'm going to do one of those for the drums. That'll be fun. But for today, we're into the guitar. So we're going to talk about a few other ideas too, of course, that you could have substituted in instead of the stuff that I did there. But we're going to talk about some of the ideas about how to sneak in that melodic minor and how to do a substitution there. You hear me do that major 7 raised 11 form over top of the 5th degree. It sounded pretty exotic. I was just like, damn, yeah, man, that sounds great. So it was a chance. I was just like, yeah, it sounds like it'll be okay. And yeah, it nails it. That was great. So no more yip-yapping. Let's get into this bad boy. All right, Shred Sexies, let's get into this idea here. Essentially, the first thing we need to do is flesh out the key. Of course, it's G major, which gives us E minor here, of course, is the pentatonic. Which also fleshes out all the other positions. You have this G major pentatonic into the A Dorian, B Phrygian into D Mixolydian into the E minor, and finally Endiner there, right? So knowing those things is going to be incredibly important, whether you know it as the 5th degree or D Mixolydian. I'll leave it up to you, but that stuff's incredibly important. Right, so initially what I'm doing here is I'm starting off in this Dorian position. I'm like this. It just sounds great, you know what I mean? And here's the first part of the lesson is essentially when you know these pentatonic shapes, you got to stop and sort of like smell the roses kind of deal and see what's going on. Be like, what else is happening here in this position? What can I do? How can I spice it up a little bit? And so you're sort of sitting there, you're slaving away. And you're like, oh, hello, bonjour, what's going on, right? So all of a sudden things are getting a lot more interesting. You're like, okay. Now all of a sudden you're like, okay, that sounds a lot better than just, right? Which is good too. But it's yin and yang. You see what I'm saying? One can be used to sort of like take people on a little side journey, a little side quest action. And the other one is more like just get stuff done. Like you're in the middle of a song and somebody's singing or something. And so it's like, you know, right? So that kind of stuff. That's the difference there is that knowing when to spice it up a little bit. And the thing is that people get way too hung up on the theory. You're like, okay, I've got this note, this note, this note, this note. Okay, I don't really want to touch it. And already you already have these notes from the 3 notes per string system, right? And already we know from previous lessons, when you have this whole step, I can fill in the note to get the chromaticism. Which is great, but then at the same time, at one point in time, you're going to be like, okay, oh, okay, well, that's one of those interest notes. And there's the next part of the lesson. Notice when I play it like this, it feels like nice. I swallowed a bug. It feels like I start and then it just ends. right? There's no comma in my musical sentence. There's no punctuation, nothing. It just starts and it ends. And that's a major problem. And I've talked about it in other videos, which is these interest notes. And that's exactly what this bad boy will provide. Now, do you need to know what it is? No, you don't. Okay. Should you, look for them? Yes, you should. Don't be like, oh, because I don't know what this is in music terms, I shouldn't be looking for it. Instead, be like, okay, what's the next note down? And then another one, right? So you have this now, essentially Locrian over top of, yes, the G major system, right? So just using that one note once in a while is going to be incredibly advantageous. And of course, I use both of them. In this case, this is the interest note I use to end the first little part of my improvisation. Creates the question mark, if you will, so that I can now jump off to the next section and do more of the melody, right? So I'm like, that's the question mark, right? Then I end it. That's me going to. And we'll talk about that in 2 seconds, but you get my idea there, right? Is that, notice there's little sections in the solo itself, in the improvisation, where I'm adding little interest points. I'm like, oh, here's a question mark, here's a comma. Right, that's the end of this little music sentence. So this first one, I start off stable, but then I destabilize. Right, then I get into stability again. Before I destabilize, right? And I destabilize by now substituting the melodic minor over top of the Dorian position. Right, so, and of course, you don't need this half step down. You can just do the, but I always love to get that. It's just a great exercise to get that little slide in there every time you get it. Instead of moving up, I'm jumping up into the next position, so to speak. And again, displacing, right? I'm doing it again. Now, this is basically me playing Dorian over top of Aeolian here. There's this scale, but I also have that scale, and that's where this comes from, right? And then, of course, I just jump right back into the scale. Now listen, it doesn't really matter if you're going to play the melodic minor exactly the same that I did, or the same sequence, or anything else. None of that stuff matters. It's the flow and the intelligent thought process necessary. Start off strong, create home base. Create a leaping off point. End it again. Destabilize. Not my best. Now, of course, I sort of restabilize there. It's just old habits die hard, of course. In the real lick, of course, I come back down. Now look at here, when I'm basically coming down in this position, I do another shift. That's a great little tool, and I do the exact thing, same thing when I'm ascending, right? right? So that idea of shifting between the scale shapes halfway, or when you get closer to the top or whatever you're going to do, is a great way to extend not only the run, but also the shifting itself creates a little break in the sort of like the, the expectation that you're already setting by just playing this one particular idea. It's not enough that you're just playing weird notes or whatever it is. It's the thing is you got to also sort of vary the rhythmic pattern and the sequence of those notes. And by doing that little mini shift, I find it's a great way, and you see me do it obviously all the time, to really subvert the listener's expectation by basically being like, look, if I do this little halfway shift, so I start coming down with this one, and then I jump up before ending where I was going to end anyways, right? Which would have been... Right? So that's my point. See, when I did it just linearly like that, up and down, not as interesting, right? But as soon as I add that extra note in there, bada bing, bada boom, everybody's happy. Well, I'm happy, at least. Right? So that gets me all the way down here. I'm in the 3rd degree now. So that's the end point. So the whole thing, those first two parts together so far is essentially, right, starting into the Dorian, jumping in there with one of these interest notes before moving into this A melodic minor. Right. From here now, I'm basically in the 3rd degree, so I can just ascend using Phrygian. But instead, I was like, why not use this E minor 7 arpeggio form? Of course. Right, so that's E minor 7. This is E minor 7 here, right? This is E minor 7. Moving down, this is going to be E minor 7. Right, you get the idea. That's E minor 7. That's E minor, right? Of course, this is E minor. This is E minor. You're starting to see you have all these choices as far as the arpeggio is concerned, and I was just like, it makes sense to marry it up because the next one I want to do is diminished. So instead of just playing a minor arpeggio, I kick it up to the next level, which is not that much... It's not much more difficult to play, I should say. And honestly, I think it's easier. But of course, you're probably like, shut up. So that's the first part. And I was like, it just actually also smooths out the transition between one and the next, right? So of course, I'm moving up and then into the 4th degree, minor 7, flat 5, meaning this 4th degree here of this G major, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? When I get here, I have a whole bunch of choices. I could play a major. I play this major 7 raised 11, which I now actually play at the 5th degree, right? But then, of course, I can play this minor 7, flat 5. Love that sound. It's just killer, right? And of course, with this minor 7 here, putting those two together is like Cinderella situation. Moving up a whole step here into Mixolydian, of course. Substituting in this major 7 raised 11 into G major 7 there. That's how I'm resolving that craziness. Okay, now you can hear, you got to kind of really... pedal to the metal there. You don't want to be spending too long on any of those notes. But if you do it quickly enough, it can be a real interesting shock to the solo system, if you will, and just be like, whoa, damn, okay, I wasn't expecting that. And it just turns people on their head a little bit, and they're like, I actually, it shocked me a bit, but I really liked how that sounded. Sometimes you can't win every one, right? So I thought it sounded cool. So we'll leave it at that, but you get my point, is that taking a chance, and all I did was like, man, of course, in my mind, I was like, it'll sound cool. And then, of course, I was thinking about it rationally. I was like, no, it won't sound cool. And they're like, yeah, just do it. It'll be cool. And I did it, and it sounded okay and pretty cool. So whatever. There it is, right? So that's the sequence, is minor 7 into minor 7 flat 5 into major 7 raised 11, from starting at the 3rd degree here, the B, moving up to the C, and then moving up to the D. Those are the starting positions, right? So I'm starting here on this B. Moving up to the C, minor 7 flat 5. Moving up to the D, major 7 raised 11. And then, of course, right, that's going to be from the major 7 system with respect to the arpeggios, 2 notes per string. So on and so forth, right? So that is essentially the main thrust of the whole first section there is just to kind of run through all of these, intricate patterns and whatnot, but also at this point, once you get to that pentatonic, now you can do a whole bunch of things. And I want to talk about some variations that you can do rather than just concentrate on whatever shred I did at the end there. But that is the essence there. You can kind of see at the outro part, I can then just go crazy and shred mindlessly because that's what people expect. But during the beginning, if I just come right out of the gate and just go guns blazing kind of situation, not so good, right? It shows that you lack a little bit of control and focus with respect to getting your musical thoughts organized and then presenting your idea a little bit more intelligently. And that can kill your solo very quickly, especially your live performance. And believe you me, a killer performance in a live situation will have hundreds, if not thousands, of people talking about you, and you will get the recognition you deserve. The reason they aren't is because your solos or your playing are not moving them. And so you have to inject these new ideas in there to help get you over the hump. Because let's face it, most people have heard this type of classic rock stuff a lot. So that's why you need to inject stuff like the melodic minor now into the mix, if you will, so that people are like, damn, okay. Because they're expecting to hear it now because there's so many super high quality musicians sneaking this stuff in here. Makes sense, right? So starting off with Dorian here, guy. Right into the pentatonic stuff. I think from there I went. Whatever it's going to be, right? But I was also working on this other idea. I want to talk with you guys with it now. It's basically doing the groups of 5 here. This is another way to sneak in these sort of like technical exercises. But then later on, what you can do is just make small alterations to the rhythms to make it sound much more like a solo, right? But I was like, this is a great way to do that. So initially I was just like, do a rake here at the 12th fret and go into this Aeolian position and the Ionian position together, okay? Like we've done many times. And then I'm moving up to the next one, which is Ionian and Dorian, right? And I'm going to keep going there. Using that sequence of 5. Now I can slide down the whole step, and that gives me the ability to repeat the same sort of shape. So I was like, that makes a lot of sense. Great way to do it. I'm not going to try to go super psycho speed because I can't really see, but you get the idea. That's the first thing you want to do. And then, of course, like I said, if you're going to do it the super fast way, great, that'll work, obviously, but then you can kind of just start changing up the rhythm. right? So with small variations, it can be very, very powerful. But of course, initially, you really want to practice them all together. So you get the stretching exercises and you get the hand-eye coordination and the dexterity and all that stuff. So of course... Right, so good stuff. And let's look at this last little bit. When I got all the way down here, I was stopping here, okay, in this Phrygian position. There's Mixolydian, right? Fifth. The minor into the major. That's Dorian. Back into the major there, right? So this Phrygian position here is where I was ending. I was like, jump back down here. I was thinking about doing a lesson on this thing I've been working on called incrementalism. So I first start off with this little chunk here, this part here. So just these three notes essentially from the melodic minor again, and then I just filled in the normal notes from this Dorian position. And then I did it again by sliding my finger up on the A string. I was like, yeah, that sounds pretty badass. Again. I was like, do it again. Now in this case, I have to stay with Lydian. A little variation there. And then I was into this. That's basically Mixolydian as far as the pentatonic scale. Alright? And of course I'm into 3 notes per string Mixolydian, but starting in this Aeolian position. And sort of going up like that. I was like, oh my god, that sounds absolutely awesome, right? Again. Notice this. Again, one of those outside notes. I'm not really doing a good job because I'm just starting to factor them in myself. But normally in the old days, I would have been very afraid of a note like that. No more. Okay? So there's a great one. The big lesson is number 1, start off strong in home base kind of mindset. Set the stage for where you can always bring your ideas back to what we call home base, right? That's adding the question mark. Lets me leap off. Creates the sentence, destabilize with the melodic minor. Keep going with the melodic minor until you get to a safe spot in the diatonic scale. In this case, the 3rd degree ascend using an arpeggio. In this case, I'm using the minor 7 based off this Phrygian position into this minor 7 flat 5 at the Lydian position 4, jumping into this major 7 raised 11 at the 5th degree, and then to this G major 7 before I'm jumping into this Ionian position of the G major pentatonic. Right, so once I get there, of course, I do something like that. Because I was like, oh look, I haven't screwed up, so I should just keep it safe, and just did the simple sort of pentatonic idea. But you might be like, okay, I want to sort of get into this more challenging, into groups of 5, right? One of those bad boys that sets up perfectly this next idea. Nails it! Okay, we'll leave it there. It was almost cool. I didn't quite hit the big John Sykes power slide. You can't win them all. So, Come up with your own ideas. The big takeaways, of course, is like using, to start with, essentially the idea of the melodic minor now over top of the Dorian position. If you're talking about G major, that's A. Once you get that sound into you, then you'll be that much further ahead of the game, of course, right? And again, the idea of stabilization and destabilization, the idea of question marks and commas and periods in your solos. When I go, you know, that's like a period, right? But when I go, that is a question mark. Nails it. You guys are loving this right now. And that's really important. I cannot tell you how, and again, notice that 1/2 step up. Come on, kid. You know you love that already. So that's what I'm talking about. Just once in a while, throwing that note in can just take your solo from being like, that was pretty badass, to being like, oh my God, I kneel before you. I'm not worthy, right? So mindset, think about it. First, you'll be like, oh yeah, right. Okay, what other notes are around there? And then 2 years from now, it'll be second nature and you'll nail that. And somebody in the audience is going to look at you and go, and you're going to go and give him the Eddie, throw him the pick, and then gig's over. See you in the next one.